Hello everyone, in this video I'll be ranking the best shortbows and longbows in Baldur's Gate 3 on a tier list. I've been quivering in anticipation to do this tier list, and if you've never used a bow before, don't try it until you knock it. I won't keep stringing you along with these bow jokes, so let's get right to the point. The funny thing is, there is actually 8 longbows and 8 shortbows in the game, with some of them being very powerful, like the Titanstring Bow, which we'll be starting off with, because everyone knows this bow. It adds your strength modifier to the damage that is dealt. This is extremely powerful from the start of the game all the way through to the end, because there's a thing called strength potions. With a Cloud Giant potion, that means a +8 to its damage, and this will also stack if you're using Arrow of Many Targets. The Titanstring is honestly one of the strongest bows in the game, and the fact that you get this in Act 1 is pretty crazy when there's already an item, the Club of Hill Giant Strength, that'll give you a 18 or 19 tier strength, and then there's also strength potions that you can get from Auntie Ethel, and she sells 3 of them. So if you're looking to make an archer, this is going to be the best Act 1 item, and also one of the best items as you progress through the game into Act 3. I could sing the Titanstring Bow's praise all day, but this is an automatic S tier. Those that use it know how powerful it is. Adding a strength modifier to your damage is very powerful. And you can see it here. So if you have high strength and high dexterity, this is going to be a very high damage weapon, because adding dexterity and strength modifiers to the damage is very solid. And if you're using the Arcane Archer with their piercing shot, it actually doesn't apply that extra damage, as the Arcane Archer does act a little bit differently. But the Arrow of Many Targets will still do it, so that makes Arrows of Many Targets a little bit better than the piercing arrow. Next, we'll focus on one of my favorite weapons in the game with the Hellrider Longbow. This is extremely effective for a variety of reasons. So you can only get this in Act 3. You have to let Shadowheart out of your party for a moment to be able to purchase this, unless you went with the evil route. Now, what this does is it's actually, I would say, the best in slot for most casters, because this gives a +3 to your initiative. Now, this game uses a D4 die for initiative, so you're essentially getting 75% of a max roll for an enemy just straight from your bow itself, which is great on a sorcerer who wants to go first so that they can set down their crowd control or ice surfaces, you name it. So this is actually a bow that's better utilized on a non-martial class like a spellcaster. However, once per turn, a creature hit by this weapon will possibly be afflicted with Fairy Fire. And this Fairy Fire actually works a little weird. So whenever you go to apply the Fairy Fire, it's only 1 per turn, which is fine. Arrow of Many Targets can hit multiple targets. But the thing with it is, so the Fairy Fire actually only lasts for 1 turn. So yeah, that turn of Fairy Fire is over on the target's next turn. So let's say it's someone that went right before your character. That's going to be the ideal way to use it, so that your rest of your team will likely be able to use their attacks on the target, getting the advantage on the attack rolls before that Fairy Fire wears off. I would recommend not, like, let's say in your initiative order, don't attack the person that's going to go next, because that Fairy Fire will expire right as soon as their turn starts. But this can be a nice way to be able to set up and hit a few extra attacks. I honestly want to put this in the S tier, because that +3 to initiative is huge, considering, again, a D4 die. That's like 75% of it right there. But yeah, it kind of splits things. If there was 2 sorcerer focus abilities on here, it'd be nice, but it's kind of focused on both having the Fairy Fire and also the initiative. I would still say, though, it's an A tier item, high A tier, just because that initiative boost is massive. I could potentially throw it into the S tier, but we do have some other really good weapons here. And next, we got the Spellthief. This is a weird weapon, because once per short rest, you regain a level 1 spell slot when you land a critical hit with the Spellthief. All right, so I can count on my hands how many times we used a bow on a caster. So that level 1 spell slot isn't going to be that massive. Its ideal surface or use would be like on an arcane trickster, or if you were to use like a paladin and they just need to do a melee attack. You do have to score a critical hit with this. So, but the thing that makes this so weird is the fact that, let's say you have 3 level 1 spell slots and you didn't use a level 1 spell slot. If you were to attack with this bow, it wastes that arcane vehemence there, so you actually wouldn't get that extra level 1 spell slot. So effectively not that great, in all honesty. This is one that I would say is a C to D tier. It sounds better than it actually is. I've had some people tell me that this bow is great to build around. I don't think so, because you're oftentimes going to waste that level 1 spell slot, and there's many other pieces of gear in the game that can give you spell slots as well. And like the Shield of Devotion can give you pretty much unlimited spell slots. But next we got the one of the best weapons in the game with Gontr Mael. Now this is a very late game item, but it's very good. So you can possibly inflict Guiding Bolt on the target on hit, which is really nice. And the best part about this is, unlike the Hellrider Longbow, which can only apply to 1 target with Fairy Fire, this Guiding Bolt can apply to all targets. So if you use Arrow of Many Targets, you can set it up multiple times. There's one caveat, though. It's similar to the Fairy Fire from the other bow, in the fact that it only lasts for 1 turn. So if you're attacking the person that goes next in your initiative order, they lose that condition right away. So it's kind of useless there. But the big benefit to using this weapon is the Celestial Haste. This is usable per long rest. You gain the haste ability. Haste, as you would know, is extremely effective. Getting 2 actions is massive. Now, this isn't as good on a attacker, especially if you're in honor mode, because that extra action can't actually give you multiple attacks. But it's rather better on a spellcaster if you're in honor mode. So the nice thing too is Celestial Haste wears off and you don't get the negative effects that the others would give you. So normally when you have haste or a potion of speed or any of the other items that give you haste, when it expires, you can't do anything in your next turn. This is not the case on this weapon. So it's still actually pretty good, especially if you're, I guess if you're on tactician mode, this would be great on a fighter because that's a good way to be able to give yourself haste without normally having it. I like it on a cleric to give themselves a couple spells or a couple actions. So it does require an action, but you can then act again. It does require concentration, so that's something just to keep in mind. But 2 actions is really nice. And being able to get that from an item, even better. You don't have to use a spell slot on it. You don't have to prepare that spell. It also gives off light in a 6-meter radius, which will set up some other gear like the coruscation ring. So yeah, the Gontr Mael is good. I would say that this is another, I would put it actually above the Titanstring Bow because of the Celestial Haste and not getting the lethargic condition from it. That is very, very good. I guess next we'll do the Longbow +1. Doesn't do anything special, it's just a longbow. So obviously I'll just like say a Spellthief's even better than that because it's got the ability to give you a level 1 spell slot. But next we got the Joltshooter. There's 3 different pieces of electrified gear in the game, and this is one of them. Now, it's not always going to be your go-to weapon. So whenever you do an attack with this weapon, you get basically the lightning charges there. You have to land the shot to be able to get that. So whenever you attack, you got lightning charges there. Lightning charges are good. They give you a +1 to attack rolls and you deal additional lightning damage in your attacks. And whenever you gain 5 charges, you can do a 1d8 of thunder or lightning damage. And you can send people flying up in the air, especially if you're if you are to spec into like the Tempest Domain or the Storm Sorcerer, it can give you some extra pushback, which is pretty funny. So you see there, Will's launched up into the air from this. So there are some instances where this could be pretty effective. Lightning charges are the best condition if you're considering them to things like the heat condition, which is not great. This isn't going to be the best item in the game, but it's not a bad item due to how early on you get it and how good lightning charges are. +2 to attack rolls is very beneficial early on in the game when you're missing half your shots. I'd have to say the Joltshooter is probably like a B tier item. I wouldn't say it's very useful later on, especially if you're using an archer, but hey, lightning does have its uses here and there, so it's a not bad item overall. And I guess we'll do the Longbow +2 next, which is really just a better version of the Longbow +1. I'd actually say it's better than the Spellthief as well. That extra +1 to damage attack rolls is better than getting a level 1 spell slot back. But the final longbow that we have is the DeadShot. Now, this is one that's actually really effective. So the number you need to roll a critical hit is reduced by 1. That's massive. Some people defend the champion fighter because you get that at level 3. I mean, a 5% chance to your critical hit rate is great, but there's obviously better subclasses out there. So getting it from an item is a fantastic choice. So the wielder also doubles their proficiency bonus when rolling ranged weapon attacks unless they have disadvantage. So you're much more likely to land your shots with this. But if you're going for a crit fishing build, this is your offhand that you want to put. So with that, I'd have to say it's an S tier item, just because that increased critical hit chance is literally what some people take a full subclass for. So if you're going to go with this, go all in on the critical hits, play a half orc, you're going to get that extra damage die, play a barbarian for the other extra damage die. You can do a lot of damage with the DeadShot bow. Now getting into the short bows, the bow of the Banshee is one that I actually want to focus on first here because it actually has some weird properties. So the bow of the Banshee will give you the ability to apply Frightened on the target and gain a 1d4 bonus to attack and damage rolls against frightened targets. The cool thing about that 1d4 bonus is it applies to your melee attacks as well. It applies to any type of spell attacks. So if you're able to set up Frightened, you can basically give your team Bless. This is great with a Great Old One Warlock. Now the other thing is, the bow of the Banshee actually works with the piercing shot there. So you can see they both saved on that there. So you can potentially frighten a target with that. You see there we hit Will with it. So boom, frightened condition from the piercing arrow. This is where, so some of the abilities don't work with a piercing shot. The bow of the Banshee does, which is really nice despite it being a short bow, which is a simple weapon. Being able to set up frighten and then also get a bonus to the damage rolls or attack rolls against the frightened targets is really good. And then the nice thing is you can then do an attack with this, set up frightened, and then go ahead with just a melee attack. If you have your full team built around frightened, you can just use your melee attack and just have this as your bow, and it'll be very good. With that, I'd have to say it's an A tier pick. Very useful for setting up that, and especially if you're the Arcane Archer fighter, because you can do a lot with it. And the fact that you get it in Act 1 is also pretty crazy. Next, I guess shortbow +1. I'm just going to throw that in the D tier. Obviously, it's not that great, but we'll next get into the hunting shortbow. So you have advantage against monstrosity type enemies. This is another weapon that actually applies to your melee attacks too. So just equip this on somebody, you'll get that bonus, and it also gives you Hunter's Mark, which is a really good spell to have because it'll deal additional weapon damage to the target. And not everyone gets access to this spell, so it can be good on like a fighter or really anybody. Getting that advantage on monstrosity type weapon enemies is also really good. The hunting shortbow is an underrated one, especially because you can get it decently early in Act 2. So yeah, I'd have to say the hunting shortbow is pretty solid. I'm not going to say it's as good as some of the other bows that we have on this list, because there's a few other shortbows that are a little better, but I would say it's a B tier item overall, just because it gives you that nice advantage on even your melee attacks or spell attack rolls if you got Scorching Ray. And next we have the Blightbringer, which gives you a 1d4 bonus to attack and damage rolls when attacking gnomes or dwarves. However, you get this in Act 3, so it's a little bit late. There are some still fights that do have both gnomes and dwarves, but it's a weird bow that targets only them. Kind of funny, plus 1d4 attack and damage is kind of nice. And whenever you land a critical hit, it also will slow the target, which is pretty good too. There are other pieces of gear that proc on critical hits, but that is kind of annoying because you're only going to hit that every like 1 in 20 or 1 in like 19. Yeah, you're not going to hit it that often, but when you do, it is definitely a welcomed thing. But yeah, the fact that you don't see that many gnomes and dwarves, and also the fact you get this in Act 3, I'd say this is probably like top of the B tier. It's not going to be as good as some of the other long or short bows that I talked about, like getting the +3 to initiative is obviously a lot better, but we'll still set it there. And next is the Darkfire Shortbow. This is a really good one because you get this in Act 2, and while the damage and everything isn't that amazing, it gives you the haste condition, or give you haste spell. So this can be another way to give yourself haste. However, this is a version of it that will give you lethargy, unlike the Gontr Mael there. But the nice thing is it gives you resistance to fire and cold damage. Being able to purchase this from Damon in Act 2 is quite nice too, but yeah, this is a solid bow all around. You don't have to put this on someone that's going to use it, because getting resistance to fire and cold damage is nice. However, if you still get the wet condition, you become vulnerable to cold damage, so there's a heads up on that. The haste spell too is also really nice. This is a bow that I'd have to say is an S tier pick as well, just because getting resistance to 2 damage types, especially with fire being so common, is nice. Taking half damage from Scorching Ray, super useful. So this can be good on a variety of different characters, even if you're going with like a barbarian, like a throwing barbarian, and you want to have the extra resistances on top of your physical damage resistance. This is a good way to do it. And next we got the least expected. So this gives you, while obscured in shadow, a 1d4 bonus to their ranged weapon attacks. And it also comes with this special ability, the Blinding Shot. You weave the lost magic of Children of the Deep Duera into your shot and possibly blind your target for 2 turns. So yeah, that's cool. Being able to blind a target is a pretty nice ability. Sorry, we blinded him and knocked him down. This bow is in one of the most annoying parts of the game, the Gauntlet of Shar, and it's kind of challenging to get. However, it's nice giving yourself that bonus to attack, especially if you're going to be using like some of the Eversight Ring or the Steel Watcher helmet to be able to see in magical darkness. This can be a great way to utilize that and give yourself that bonus to ranged weapon attacks. Although if you're attacking from shadows, you're likely going to get advantage as well, so you're not likely to miss, but everyone can use a 1d4 bonus to anything, and it also has that Blinding Shot, which is nice. This is another bow I'd say is probably around the B tier. It's pretty solid. I'd put it actually like high-ish B tier. Not the worst, not the best, but there's others here that are good too. Like the Vicious Shortbow. Now, this is one I want to really focus on because there's a lot of ways we can synergize with this. So you can get Dolor Amaris, 2 of these, which add additional 7 damage to your weapon attacks, or it says unarmed attacks. It doesn't properly work on your unarmed attacks. This is where it gets crazy. If you have the Ballast Armor in Act 3, the Ballast Armor will actually double all your piercing damage. So with the Ballast Armor, and it says unless they're immune to it, but it works on immunities too. So you got 2 of the daggers on your hands, and you got 1 of these, or if you have the dagger, the axe, and the short bow, you're going to get a +7, +7, +7. That's 21 extra damage, which turns to 42 extra damage if the target is vulnerable to the damage type. Orange daggers can also apply that, but you can have all 3 of those items together. Bottom line is, critical hit stacking is pretty crazy in this game and adding extra damage. And also, what's cool about this is, if you're using, let's say, Shadow Blade, which also can be doubled with the Resonance Stone, and then have a Dolor Amaris in your offhand, which is a great combo for the Blade Singing Wizard, because you can throw the Dolor Amaris in your offhand, this bow in your main hand. That's plus 14 damage, doubled to 28 because it takes your main hand damage. So if you're using Shadow Blade, that's a lot of extra damage on your attacks. So I'd have to say that the Vicious Shortbow is another one I want to put in the S tier, but it's probably a high A tier pick. just because that extra critical hit damage is really nice. And the final one that we got here is actually a pretty good one as well. So this is the Bow of Awareness. Now, +1 to initiative rolls, that doesn't sound like it's a lot, but again, this game uses a D4 initiative die, so a 1+ bonus is actually pretty large. That's the difference between going before or after an enemy, and in the action economy, sometimes it's just best to be able to go first. So the only reason I'm going to say this bow is good is because you get an Act 1. So you can give yourself that +1 bonus to initiative rolls on your spellcaster. They don't even have to use this bow. Just take it for the +1 to initiative and you'll be a happy camper. So with that, I'd have to say that this one is it's a B tier pick. Early game, +1 initiative, it's pretty solid. So yeah, those are the best bows and short bows in Baldur's Gate 3 ranked on a tier list. Let me know which of the bows is your favorite in the game and hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already. I hope you have a great day and I'll catch y'all in the next video.